Oh yeah, I haven't seen my laptop charger since I got it. Oh. All right, welcome. If you can please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Thank you for joining us on this lovely Valentine's Day. We'll get through this so you can get home to your loved ones. All right, we have no requests to speak at open forum, so we're going to go right to our presentation, Smart Schools Investment Plan.
Well, hold on, Ms. Mel. We kind of derailed you in.
I guess so.
You had to come through the center stage.
Yeah.
Sure, give me 1 second. All right. So back in the 2015-16 school year, Sidney Central School District did a Smart Schools Investment capital project. Hey, just to give a quick overview, in 2014-15, New York State passed a statewide referendum to approve what's called the Smart Schools Bond Act, which authorized money for school districts to be able to increase in safety and security measures, educational technologies, infrastructure, things like that. In the Sidney Central School District put together a project that involved secure vestibules in the elementary school, secure vestibules in the high school, the original badge access points in the district with their security badges to be able to control access points and in and out, and some cameras. That project, excuse me, was approved in 2016 and it was closed out in 2018. That project came in at a total of $1,067,000, which means we had some left over. The Sidney Central School District's initial allocation was $1,378,095. And Ms. Warner's been working on getting the leftover. There was an extra $25,000 that was unspent on that project that's being transferred back into what we have allocated still available to the school district. So right now, without final confirmation, but it's pretty close to $312,228 that we still have available. That is, that's dollar for dollar matched. So we obviously would want to leverage this money to be able to do something with. We initially pay for it. So you would see it in a line item expense as Smart Schools Bond because you initially pay for it and then you get reimbursed dollar for dollar once the project's complete. It does take some time for the reimbursement. I think the initial one was, like I said, around that $1,067,000. It took about a year for reimbursement, but you got it back once you closed out the project. But one of our needs is we have across the district is to upgrade our PA systems, and PA systems is not just the ding of a PA system into the hallways and classrooms, but with these systems that we have, you can actually talk right in specifically into individual classrooms. You can display different messages on classrooms. We would have display boards in hallways and in main areas, cafeterias, lobbies, and things like that to be able to communicate better. So the project comes in at a little bit more than $312,000. It comes in at $370,000, but that outfits every room, all three PA systems in the elementary, the old middle school, and the high school. So it upgrades. Back a couple of years ago in 2019, we did what was called an E-rate project. And E-rate projects allow you to deal with infrastructure upgrades for running like Ethernet cable throughout your district and things like that. So we did the E-rate project and ran all the different, we can say connections, if you will, or what they're calling licenses or end ports to all the classrooms, all the main areas. So the infrastructure is all done. So this is really pretty much like a plug and play where we take the clock off the wall, we drop the Cat6 wire that's already run and the ceiling tiles down, and it's literally a plug and play. Plug them into them and you mount the clocks and display board. You mount the display boards on the wall and the hallways where they're going to go. So that's really what the overview of the Smart Schools plan is. There's a 30-day public open comment period where we'll post the plan tonight on our website in the news feed, and we're going to create a Smart Schools tab that they can go to, and that's for open to public comment, to anybody to provide feedback with us. And then at the March meeting, we'll do a public hearing. I'll go through a very similar presentation with a few slides. We'll do that right, and it'll be part of our regular meeting. It'll be like a presentation that we'll start with here. And then once we do the public hearing after that, and the board approves it, so tonight the board will do a preliminary approval to be able to move forward with the public comment period. And then at the public hearing, we would approve the project then to be able to be submitted to state ed. The one thing with these projects at state ed, it's right now a minimum of 12 to 14 months for approval. So this work in an ideal world would happen next April over spring break or the summer of that. We have the equipment right now put together so it's functional in the high school. In the some areas it's hard to hear, but so that's where that work would be done. Would hopefully be next spring break if it was approved. That would be ideal. So in this packet, in this summary, is broken down by building, what they would be and the cost per building, and then the elementary as well too, broken down by the individual classrooms, and then the common areas and the signage boards. You'll see that the total cost of the project is $370,000. The quote is $650. We've been allocated the $312,000. We're actually going to try to submit for the whole thing and see if they will fund the whole thing. Just because you're allocated that, we're not sure where that'll go, if they will fund that or not. So we'll try first that. If not, then we have a couple of different options. We can perhaps tie it into the 100K or the capital outlay project for that year. Pay it on the general fund, right, appropriate money into a budget from capital fund to be able to do it. So we have some options that we could do with that, but it's work that definitely needs to be done. So the timetable, as I just shared, the preliminary approval from the board tonight. If that's what they want to go forward with, we'll post on the website as soon as your approval. The 30-day window, we'll do a public hearing on the 14th, submittal to state ed for approval, and then wait to hear come back. In here too is the quote from Day Automation. Maybe from Day Automation, and it's really the same information I just put in there with the specific breakdown by building for the cost. There's a $370,000. And then I just included in here some displays of what they look like. So what it would look like in the classroom, and they have their individual speakers. Again, right from the main office, they can communicate into room 505. They can communicate in a group of rooms. You can set up, you can communicate across the district. You could put display messages on there. So it just allows you to do a lot with that. In the hallways, you'll see display boards, and then larger ones in the other areas. Sorry. And then we just did the last piece of this is there's a required committee that has to kind of put the work together, if you will. And we tied that into our district safety team meeting to not create yet another committee because it's a large representation of, or a good representation, if you will, of the district. So just some of the people that are on, these are the people that are on the committee, the district-wide safety team meeting. So this is our Smart Schools Bond Act committee. So this is what you approve in the action item tonight is a preliminary approval for the 30-day comment. And then in March, you approve the plan then to be submitted forward. And again, it's a dollar for dollar reimbursement. We pay for it up front, and then we get the dollar for dollar back. So again, just trying to leverage the most out of the funds that are available. Any questions with the smart schools?
So the main reason is because you want the speakers, right?
It is the PA system. Yeah.
So like if you can't come up with the extra 58,000, it seems like it's a lot to spend for a clock. Okay. Right? For
way more than a clock. Yeah.
And it just seems like the speakers are probably the most important thing. So is there a way that you can maybe scale down some of the sizes on some of the other ones if you can't get the full matching funds for it?
Yeah, for sure. The classroom ones would be non-negotiables. It would be the ones that were in the hallways,
right,
in the larger common areas. But yeah, you for sure could.
You could scale it if you can't get the matching ones. I mean, it seems like there's ways that you can do that to keep it within.
I hope so. Yeah, where it doesn't cost extra, if you will. I mean, you're not going to see this in the taxpayer stuff, but yeah, the idea would be that they would fund it entirely. I don't know if they'll do that, but yeah, we for sure could. Yeah, that was kind of the goal plan, like where we would want all of them for as much exposure, if you will, throughout the buildings. But yeah, we could.
And this is a project that we worked with Delaware Academy on as DTC. And I know their intercom system was a difficult challenge to, try to get an upgraded system, and, having this all run with Cat 6 and stuff like that, it's a big lift.
It is.
And it's a good project, because I know theirs was antiquated, and when we put in some fiber for them and stuff, they was trying to do some preliminary planning for that, because they weren't sure what they were going to do with their intercom system, because it was tough.
Yeah.
It's tough to find a system that is modernized enough that isn't on, like old copper wire or whatever, or, having the wiring done is a huge lift, and then putting these in is a good bonus. So this is a project a few schools are dealing with, because the intercom systems are really old and they're tough to maintain.
And really you can't get parts.
Right.
I mean, it took us, 2.5 months to get an amplifier for the high school. And the amplifier was $1,800, right? I mean, they had to find one, right, to be able to do this. So it just kind of gives you an idea where you're at with it. And that was just to make it functional with a Band-Aid right now. Right. But yeah, it's a good project. It's a good way to use this money, right? I mean, that's really the purpose of it, if you will.
Yeah, I think it's a good use of money, and I don't think the extra 50,000 matters. I mean, in terms of what we're getting out of it, if we're going to do it, let's just do it the right way. I don't want to scale stuff down because we're short of. I mean, we have the money.
Yeah.
It's not like we're really tight to things or whatever. But and the other part is too. It's not just the intercom is great, but I'm thinking the messaging in terms of safety. If there's an emergency, also our bell system is super antiquated. So I feel like it's long overdue, and if we should just do it. We just do it right.
Yeah, and I think too is it's important, like that's where you can communicate emergency messages directly to every room instantly, right, with a touch of a button. There's a lot of things that you can do with the system. Picture like your blue lights outside, your emergency blue lights, which is part of the capital project. You can do that inside too in the classrooms. So there's a lot to it.
In terms of what's going on the website, what exactly is going on the website? Because I feel like the summary, it's great, and if you know the language and you've been in this forever, you understand it, but do we have sort of some slides to make it easy for the public to understand what we're doing and why?
Yep, so I'm actually, as soon as it gets approved, right, I'll get a hold of our PR specialist, we'll put it on the website. The public hearing presentation goes on there too, which is 7 slides that break it down into pretty simple language, right? The purpose of the Smart Schools Bond Acts, right? The focus areas of it, what our focus is, the timeline explained. So yeah, it's a little bit more user friendly than what this is. Easier to read, quick, 6 slides, but that'll go on the website too. So if you, it'll go in the news section. There'll be a little blurb about Smart Schools Project, right? What it is. You'll click on that link. But also if you go under the district information, there's going to be a header for Smart Schools. You can actually click on that, and that's where you'll see a shorter summary. You'll see this entire summary, and then you'll see the slides.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Good, thank you.
Yeah.
Exciting. All right, next we have superintendent's report and universal pre-K RFP.
Yeah, this is just a update. We are going to send out the legal notice in the papers tomorrow. Our legal paper is the Daily Star for the community-based partnership for UPK services. So we'll send the legal notice out. We'll let it run for 14 days. It runs 3 times in the Daily Star and runs 2 times in the Walton Reporter. And then we will collect those. 2 years ago when we did it, the Coleman Center was the only one that submitted into that. So we would like to be able to award this RFP in the March meeting. It's really the same RFP as what we used the last time. The only change of this is the duration. So it's a 1-year contract with the ability to extend it for 4 more years for a total of 5, but it has to be done annually, just like what we did last year, or the first year, I'm sorry, we did it. It was a 1-year contract. And then if you remember last year, we extended that 1 year, right? So it'll be the same process that is that we have to extend it each year of that contract. It's not an automatic 5-year contract. It has to be extended annually each year.
And what is the notice if we decided to, we've talked about possibly pulling it back in time to time, whatever. What is our notice to them?
You can actually terminate the agreement at any time, both parties. So, but you would want to do it with ample time to be able to plan for that, right?
Yeah, both places.
Both budgets, yeah.
Do you have a cost as that if you did it internally for the UPK, what it would be? So if this-
No. Not dollar for dollar, like what it would be exactly. If we ran it with what we're hoping to run it for next year, it would be about the same cost. We wouldn't be able to do the 5 sections. There's going to be 5 classrooms down there. We wouldn't, very similar to our kindergarten model. I know Mr. Wood's been working with Coleman about a staffing model. We would not be able to dedicate 5 teachers and 5 aides to that program and run it for what it is. Not 5 sections. You could consolidate, right, and make them smaller sections. I'm sorry, make larger sections, what was like a reduced number of sections, 3, but more kids in them. You could do that and probably do it for that budget, but not the same staffing model as what they're going to do. You can do it.
But like if they come back with a cost proposal that's much higher,
They can't. They have to work within the cost of what we do. They can't exceed that. They can't exceed what is the state allocation.
okay, but they could propose it more if they wanted to.
No.
You won't pay them out more.
They can't. Right, so the agreement, the RFP is whatever the state allocated UPK grant is. So they can't exceed that.
So why are you putting in a cost proposal?
What's
In
that?
case it comes in less.
No, we actually, with a community partnership, it has to be a pass through for us. So that
Right.
dollar figure, right, goes right to them.
Right, I don't know why you have the cost proposal in your RFP then.
That's part of the required for a community-based model.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
that's
really it doesn't mean anything.
not
You
really.
just have
It's
to have it.
already in there.
They have to show a cost per pupil, yep. And they'll actually take the number of kids that'll be enrolled and divide the total number, $463,383 divided by the number of total enrolled. And they'll put that in there for the cost per pupil.
Now, just being a little proactive and creative here, if they have trouble staffing, which I know has been everywhere, is there something that we can do where we partner and help them short-term if need be and send over a teacher temporarily or a substitute or something that, and how would that work with the partnership of, would they reimburse the school? I mean, is there something that we can have a little give and take there so that if there is a staffing shortage, we're still fully covered?
Yep.
You know, as an organization.
I use the example of like a support staff or an aide, right? So if that was a pass-through and it was provided, or I'm sorry, not pass-through, if that was provided by the Sidney Central School District, right, then they would be billed for that, right? That is the cost of that program, right? So they wouldn't receive that money that was cost. So we'd actually either bill them for it or just withhold that piece, whatever the cost is for that.
Which helps both parties, because
Yeah.
there at least the kids get the services that they want, and
Yep.
if we have to support a partner, you know.
And that could easily happen. I know that Mr. Wood and I have talked about it with Mrs. Johnston a few different times about perhaps maybe providing aid support if they can't. Then that's what we would do. We'd either bill them or that we would just withhold that amount of money that it costs for them.
That's good to have that set up, though.
Yep.
That'd be a good fail-safe thing.
Great. Next, we have our budget presentation.
Yeah. All right. So this, in February, what we do is a state aid projections, right? The governor came out and some of the key pieces that the governor talked about is fully funding foundation aid. If you remember that, it's been a pretty hot topic. The governor was very adamant about following through on that year 3. And it just really quickly give a little bit of history on that. I know many of you know this already. So the Sidney Central School District was only funded at 83% of the foundation aid portion of it. And that deals with your growth to wealth ratio of your district. And 2 years ago, it started the process. I think the first year we got an increase, foundation aid somewhere between I'll say it's around 500,000. I can't remember exactly. Last year was 1.4 million. And this year, as you'll see here, is it'll be about 2.6, 2.7 million increase in foundation aid, which makes us fully funded, right? Which is what really should have been happening. It's an awesome thing when they're doing it. And I'll get into the specifics a little bit. So you'll see an increase in the overall revenue piece by about 2.6 million because of that increase in foundation aid. Again, great problem to have. I'm so thankful that they've done it. The other piece is the governor and the state have been very committed to early learning, meaning 3-year-old programs and 4-year-old programs with funding for that, which is also super exciting and a relief that you're not worried about what that funding looks like. Remember, our UPK money for about 20 years never changed. It was the same $84,000, right, for 2 decades almost. But those were some of the big topics. Is we get into the budget process, right? It's always important, and I talk about this all the time in lots of meetings, is that we stay grounded in what our focus is, right? What is our mission? What is our vision? And what are our focus areas? So really prioritizing what we do, make sure that we stay focused on student supports and to promote our culture and climate and positivity, and our commitment to what I'll call professional learning communities, but are really our commitment to work on collaborative teams. And then our community partnerships and enrichment. So really making sure that we make decisions on that when we move forward through the budget process. So just a quick state aid revenue comparison of current year being on the left-hand side, is you'll see just first and foremost the foundation aid with the increase of about 2.7 million almost. Our BOCES aid, if you happen to see the initial run from the governor, from the state, our BOCES aid was in there at 1.45 million, and it was a mistake, right? BOCES, DCMO BOCES had submitted into the state. There was a portion of the BOCES aid that was left off. I believe it was a capital expenses that was left off. So if you look at that initial run, it puts it at 1.452 million. That is not correct. So it's been corrected for districts that have received the update, but it's not updated on all the state aid runs. So right now it's at 2.5. We're still making sure that that's an accurate number, because you can see this year it comes in about 2.1 million of current state aid. So again, we want to be a little bit conservative with that. Our high tax aid, that doesn't really change. Hardware and software aid changes based on what you spend. From the previous year, you always want to make sure that you maximize that, because if you don't maximize that, you'll actually lose that. Our transportation aid, you see it's up just a little bit. Again, these are expense-driven aids, so you want to be careful about what you predict on that. I think it's always a good practice to underestimate that revenue and overestimate the expenses a little bit with these, just because they're expense-driven aids and things can change with that. Our building aid is pretty stable. Building aid is remember, this is really like your cover your debt service payment or your mortgage payment. So those are calculated based on what your debt is. So it's what you really want to do is you want to balance out what your building aid is and what your mortgage payment or your debt service aid is, right? And balance that teeter-totter. And this district is in really good shape. Mrs. Warner and I just met with fiscal advisors, a gentleman named Ben Massalona, to just look at that balance, not just for this year, but 3, 4, 5 year, 10 years down the road and what we need to do. And that's really why capital projects are important, to be able to balance that building aid coming in. So when debt comes off, you want to be able to put debt back on so that you can balance that. So the district is in good shape for that. And then other expenses, or other revenues, is about 804,000. This would be where your UPK money would be in, and any high cost excess aid. So you're looking at state aid at 23,600,000. And just to compare overall projected revenue is, again, you'll just carry that number over from the governor's proposal of 23.6. Our local share of 6.1 million, and our anticipated tax levy. And at this point in time, I would recommend to go 0% with the increase in state aid. I would not recommend increasing the tax levy, just not necessary. And remember, 1% generates about $60,000 in new money. Appropriated fund balance just for this year, to give you an idea, is 1.25 million. And then from our debt service is 150,000. And just really quick, debt service can be used to help balance if there's any difference between your building aid coming in and your debt service payment, right? Whatever the difference that is, you can appropriate debt service to be able to offset that so that you're whole. So you're not like spending money out of your savings account, if you will. I mean, debt service is kind of like a savings account, but you can do that to be able to balance that. Right now, at this stage of the game, I'd say that we appropriate about 850,000 out of fund balance and 150,000 out of debt service. But again, that's going to be a little bit moving when we see what revenue comes in, what expenses come in, to be able to balance that. Miscellaneous revenue, I just held the same number. Really three big pieces make up this number. It's the Masonville lease, which is about $110,000 annually. It's your BOCES surplus that comes in with funds that are unspent from BOCES that come back in the next year. I think we get those in October. Is that correct? Right, we get those in October of next year. So we'll anticipate that. And then what we'll call school day tuition, which is any money that you get from the county or the state for foster care types of placements, things like that. Those are the kind of the big three that make up the miscellaneous revenue. So when you're looking at comparison from year to year, this year currently we're at $28,797,209, and with the increase of state aid or increase of the foundation aid, $31,489,342. One thing I just want to point out here is within that foundation aid, there's what's called a high impact tutoring set aside. So because our foundation aid has increased as much as it did, right? 20% of the increase has to be used for what they call high impact tutoring set aside. So that's $272,987. And with that is, not to get into too much detail, because I know this is Mr. Stenna's project, is a tutoring that has to occur between grades 3 through 8, and it has to focus on ELA and math. It can happen during the school day, but that money, $272,000, has to be devoted to that and dedicated to that and tracked for that. So we're right now building what that potentially could look like throughout the school year. Minimum is 30 minutes, 2 times a day for ELA and math. 2 times a week, I'm sorry, not a day, 2 times a week, I apologize. For kids that have been identified as having need in the high impact tutoring for ELA and math in grades 3 through 8. So right now, and this is brand new. There's a question earlier, is this something that will be available in years to come, right? Will this be set aside? And I don't know, this first time it's been done, I don't know if they'll lump it back into the foundation aid. I'm just not sure. But we do know that it will be a line item into the expense where it'll say high impact tutoring set aside, and we'll put that right into a line item for expense, just like what we do for the smart schools. So you'll see that because we have to track it that way. So part of that increase out of that 2.7 million has to be dedicated to that high impact tutoring for grades 3 through 8 in ELA and math. So we're working on what that looks like. But I think it's an important piece to see because you'll see that as a line item. So right now, this is the projected revenue. There's still a couple little moving parts. We know that the budget's not true until April 1, but typically there hasn't been a whole lot of changes, and there's really been a lot of focus on schools, from UPK and early learning to CTE commitments to fully funding foundation aid. So there's a lot of positives for schools right now. So. And one thing I think is just important to know too is with all of the federal money, I know I've said this a few times, but with all the federal money, right, that you got from your stimulus money is we, I think, did a really nice job of spending it wisely. We didn't supplement or supplant anything out of the general fund, right, with that, right? We did, the HVAC project in the high school, right, junior, senior building. We're doing the HVAC project because you approved the pre-authorization money in the pod. So we didn't do it with people adding it because we want to be able to support whatever it is that moves forward from that. So I just think that's an important piece to share too. Any questions with kind of the first run? And what you'll get in March is you'll get the first look at the revenue, whatever will change between now and then you'll get the first look at high picture of the different line items. It'll be by category, 1,000s, 2,000s, 3,000s, and you'll get the first kind of look at that in March.
I just had a question on the UPK revenue that'll be coming in. Now, like you said, 2 years ago, I think it was, or 3 years ago, when we first started it was like 84K. Yeah. Now, I believe, if I'm remembering right, is 400.
463, 343.
Yeah, that's the number I had in my head.
Yep.
That's a big difference, and like you said, that's kind of a pass through. So the Coleman Center is receiving over 300K, more, almost 400K more. Is there? I know they're doing a lot of projects down there to try to improve, the experience for the kids, but. I guess the blunt question is, what value are we getting for that extra $300,000? I know we have more kids. I know the program is growing. I know they're doing some capital projects to improve the flow for the kids. But as a general question, I'm just asking that.
Yeah, Mr. Wood, I'm not to put you on the spot, but probably one of the most important things right now is benchmarking the students, right, is to identify where they're at and what their growth is learning-wise. 3 benchmarking, is that correct, Ms. Wood, that they do throughout the year?
Yep, 3. We have one we're doing right now. They just finished actually for February. They'll do it again at the end of the year, and they did it in October.
So one of the things is, there are some standards that have to be met. It's not just like, here's money, like, do what you've been doing, right? I know that Mr. Wood and Mrs. Johnston and Mrs. Williams, Amy Williams, the director, they meet. Are you meeting?
I meet
Every 2 weeks?
I meet bi-weekly with Amy to go over all sorts of things, but academics, the structuring of the building, whatnot, ways that we can support them.
So really looking at a more seamless transition from, UBK to kindergarten, but also making sure that they have the resources to be able to better educate kids. So there's a bunch of different standards that have to be met along with it. So there's anytime that there's money given to it, right, there's going to be auditing, there's going to be benchmarking, there's going to be standards that have to be met. And right now it's been pretty good for year 2. I mean, year 1 was like, it was year 1. Right, year 2, much better communication-wise, much better integration-wise, much better plan of transitioning UBK kids to up here. So,
Well, and if I'm remembering our first conversation about this years ago, 84K was kind of light to run the program. I mean, they were underfunded basically, so they couldn't run the program for that. And 400 is a little heavy, but it seems like they're adding a lot. They're adding extras to bolster that and improve the experience.
and Mr. Wood's really working with a staffing model that supports what it is the transition when they come to us as well too. So,
It's a full day, right?
Yeah.
It's-
It's a full day,
Full day.
Yeah, 400,000 doesn't really seem that much to me.
but it's a full day. We were running it on 84 for half a day.
half a day, yep. 2
Well, like
a lot
I
of
say,
parents
it was
couldn't participate.
underfunded. Yeah, it was
Yeah, way
underfunded the
underfunded.
first time.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, that 84,000 didn't even cover the teacher teaching that.
Yeah.
Well, I remember they were hoping to get some of the kids, since it was a half day, some of the kids to stay and then become tuition paying, up there for the Common Center. So I remember that was the kind of the business model to try to make it work, and to actually fund it ourselves and have a fully funded program is good.
Yeah, and there's just not as many things like for here, right? We would have to do some pretty good renovations to have that many kids on campus to be able to do it. When you're talking about classrooms with bathrooms and flow and structure and different entrances, like you'd have to do some infrastructure work to be able to take that many kids on.
Well, and I think that's what they're doing down there too. They have,
Yes,
if what I saw, they're doing quite a few
5
projects to
classrooms.
try to accommodate.
they're adding 3 classrooms, a secure vestibule, different staffing model. Because one of the pieces that we talked about, and I think we actually talked about this not that long ago, is their capacity. They just didn't have the capacity. Like, we never want to turn somebody away. And that's what we were worried about, capacity. We were also worried about, the number of kids in the class and increasing the number of sections, right? For littles like that. So, I mean, pleased with where it's at right now. Right?
There
Sure.
are other districts who are doing similar
Yes.
thing, like the Oneonta School District. Like they run a UPK program through Bunbury Children's Center. So I think it's a pretty good model, and there are lots of districts who have the ability to do this who are doing it. There are tons of districts who don't have a child care center
Yeah.
in their municipality and can't do it, but I think this is a pretty tried and true model.
And the state has really New York State is really pushing community-based partnerships with schools. I mean, that is a big push for them.
Well, I think it's a good support model to
It is.
keep the community strong and keep other organizations functioning, and all the, businesses that support those organizations also keeps the whole community strong.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And a good business partnership, right? Any questions to the budget? Sorry, I want to make sure if there's any questions on that. And I just had a couple things with superintendent report before I go on. You just see the instructional calendar is on. It's a little bit early, but we got it done. We got it done at the BOCES level in January, so that's why it's a little bit early. If there's any question about that. And remember, we will start our strategic planning in the month of March. So more to come with that. So really, to summarize, the month of March will be like the community input and the thought exchanges that will go out to the community, and we'll get ready to send letters out and let them know ahead of time with collecting feedback. And then I know you have the dates in April that the work sessions for that as we go through there. So just remind you on that.
On the academic calendar with BOCES, starting the second 2 days after Labor Day, I know that's always,
Yeah.
different school districts start, the day after Labor Day, and some start 2 days. Is that when BOCES actually starts taking students, is 2 days after, and we're matching with them?
Yeah, I can't remember. There's some school districts that will only have 1 day, and I think BOCES is actually open on that day, on the first day after. So it would be September 6th. I think they're open. Yeah, some districts will take that. We like the 2 days, right? We spend some time doing all your mandatory training the first day, and the second day it's more, let's get prepared, let's get situated, right? And comfortable, kind of do that stuff in our classrooms. Some people will take that day and do it before Labor Day. Some will move it later on and save it. So there's just different strategies with it. Yeah.
Do you want to explain real quick why graduation is not on there?
Sure. Yeah,
Just
good
the-
question. Yep. So the one piece with this calendar that shows we actually go all the way to Wednesday, June 26th. That is a second rating day, if you will. Monday, June 17th is a Muslim holiday that happened to fall on Monday the 17th. It's similar to like an Easter where it just rotates days, if you will. And it happened to fall on the 17th. So the state came out with this calendar and said, you can observe the day, right, if that's what the district does, or it can count as a first rating day. So it still counts as attendance one way or another. So that will be a rating day for us. And then you have Juneteenth, which falls on the federal holiday Juneteenth, which falls on the Wednesday. So that pushes those 2 days into the 24th and 25th, that Monday and Tuesday of that last week. With the second rating day, being June 26th. So it's late. So really the conversation is like about a graduation date potentially, right? Do you do it the Saturday, the 22nd, or do you do it the Saturday, the 29th? That's pretty late. So what we had an admin meeting talking about this, where we're going to share it regionally at the superintendent level to say, what are school districts' thoughts? It'd be awesome if regionally we could come up with something like that. I don't know if that will ever happen. But then really communicating early, what are we going to do? Are we going to do it the earlier date? Lots of times regions exams, those on the 24th and 25th, kids don't take them for being dependent on graduating from high school, right? It's, maybe if let's say physics is one of those days, it might be for advanced regions with science distinction or something like that. So probably should have some conversation what day might be the best, Saturday the 22nd or Saturday the 29th. And I know Ms. McNamara will, I'm sure we'll spend some time talking about it, but something at least put on your radar. We did not put the graduation date on that because of that.
That'd be weird to have to graduate and come back and have to take our regents.
Yeah, right. And there are some school districts that do it, but yeah. So yeah, if you have feedback, we'd love the feedback with what you want to do with that. And then, so again, we won't make next year's calendar where we send it out. Although we're going to do it way earlier this year. We will do it in July. That is a goal that will be met. So we'll put it on there. So we don't really need to know until then, but we also probably should have some discussion if you have some input, what you might think. And then just a couple things I want to share, which I think are pretty cool, is Sean, if you want to just talk a little bit about what's going on in the K-6 this week.
Yeah, so our counselors, Mrs. Smith and Mrs. Nordenhold, they've done it the last couple of years, but they basically set up this kindness spirit week, but a kindness challenge, if you will, that starts at the beginning of the month, because on the 17th, this coming Friday, is National Kindness Day. So really what it is, it's a challenge to students over the course of a couple weeks to compete with one another in their classrooms of who can do the most acts of kindness. And every time they do an act of kindness, they write the act of kindness on a chain link, they loop them, and they make these chain links that you'll see hanging from all the classrooms. And they have a really good time. We count them at the end. Actually, they just finished them up. They count them at the end of last week. And basically, whatever class wins the spirit challenge, kindness challenge, they will get to do something special to Mr. Hansen and I, whether it be a pie in the face, being slimed, I hear silly string slime painting my face. I don't know, those are the things that I've heard. They said whatever, I said, it's all fair game, whatever they'd like to do to me for fun. So, and I know Mr. Hansen got a pie in the face last year. So that's what they're competing for. They're super excited. The results are in. I don't know what's happening yet, but they're in. And this week really is, we have the Spirit Week, so to tie everything in. They organized with, all the teachers to wear yellow, red, superhero shirts, favorite sports team, and school colors. And so they're just showing that throughout the week. And it's just an exciting time. The counselors and the teachers did a great job presenting this to the students and getting them all excited because you see the kids each day, they're doing something. The first couple of days were just, saying hi to someone in the hallway, good morning, waving, smiling. And the number of kids that do that, they're looking for you to see that they're doing it. So it's awesome. They're doing a great job.
Thanks, Mr. Wood.
Awesome.
Yep.
Do that work.
I think they should, shave your
We
head.
should do that.
So,
And then,
so
sorry.
that was one thing that was brought up. And I said, don't encourage it, but
Yeah.
I'm game for all
Oh.
this.
Silly
Wow,
slime and
that's
some would be
dedication.
better.
And just,
Who do we need to call to get that to happen?
The results are in.
and then, part of the initiative, there's nothing to show here.
Briefly so.
It was there.
Yeah.
Never seen that before. Interesting.
We got it. We took
Yeah, you got it.
Yeah, we found it.
Just want to highlight an initiative that Ms. McNamara is doing this year is highlighting a selected student from each grade level based on teachers' input. And Ms. Mack, you want to talk about what the students do again too, which I think is pretty remarkable after they've been selected.
Yep, so obviously the teachers are picking students based on their academic progress, dedication to their studies, and then just overall showing character and warrior pride. And then we make an announcement, call them down, give them their certificates, feed a little Dunkin' Donuts for breakfast. And then basically, as I explained before, Ms. Rogan and I asked them to write a letter of appreciation. So basically a thank you note to a staff member, right? So it could be a coach, counselor, administrator, teacher, a cafeteria worker, bus driver, someone that's made a positive impact on them that they also kind of want to recognize and show appreciation for in return. And they get very excited about that. And a lot of them have been, instead of just putting it in their mailbox, they're taking a donut to them and their hand delivering it to their teacher of choice. And they're very excited to do that because they absolutely appreciate the work that the staff are doing for them as well. So it's a positive culture builder all around.
Thanks. And that's all I have.
Great, thank you very much. All right, moving on. Resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to approve the minutes from the regular Board of Education meeting held on January 10th, 2023.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to approve the personnel consent agenda as presented.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to approve the consent agenda as presented.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Are you good?
Yep.
Okay.
It doesn't seem to be moving.
Okay, just wanna make sure. Okay.
I'm on the first action item.
Okay. Resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to approve the non-resident tuition rates for the 2023-2024 school year as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to approve an overnight field trip on May 17th through 20th, 2023 for the annual New York State FFA convention.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to approve the preliminary Smart Schools investment plan as presented.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to approve the contract between Sidney Central School District and Train US Inc. for the acquisition and installation of equipment in connection with its 2023 elementary school pod federally funded project, the project, under the scope of the Omnia Partners U.S. Communities Contract number 3341, as outlined in a proposal dated January 23rd, 2023.
So
Second.
Discussion.
No, this is very similar to the project that we did in the junior senior high school, just in the pod.
All those in favor?
I,
Opposed? Carried.
And those 100% federal funds. That is what
Board member comments? Okay. Resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to move into executive session to discuss the employment history of a particular person or corporation or matters leading to the employment of a particular persons or corporation.
so moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
I,
Opposed? Carried. Thank you.
Hey, you know what? I was feeling it tonight.
Yes, well,